Hello, Broke Gamer here, and due to the total lack thereof, I've decided to make some video tutorials for the roguelike survival RPG that is Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. So for this first video, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the options menus and character creation, because that's the first thing you're going to have contact with. So when the game starts up, this is what you see. There is zero mouse control in the entire game. So you'll be using the arrow keys to navigate these menus. So yeah, here you see the home page and the forums and the wiki. I recommend checking the forums out if you haven't already. New game, pretty self-explanatory. Load, again, that's pretty self-explanatory. You can load the save games. Reset resets your map, so that next time you start a new game it will generate a brand new map, because although it is a roguelike with permadeath, and when your character dies it's gone for good, the map is persistent, and any alterations that previous characters have made as well as their dead body will be present in the next game that you start. Special, it has quite a nice little tutorial in itself that you should probably check out just to familiarize yourself with the controls, and also a defense mode, which is kind of like a tower defense. You start off in one of the generated structures in the game and you defend it against waves of enemies, and you can start off with weapons and stuff that you purchase, and it's quite interesting, but it's quite limited in scope compared to the main game. And again, help actually has some pretty helpful things, as you'd imagine. There's a lot of blurbs about the various mechanics in the game. It doesn't go into a great deal of detail, but it's there if you need reminders. And here are the credits. You can see the original creator of the game, Wales, at the top there. And everybody who's currently or formerly contributed a lot to the game, and your name could go there. This is an open source community developed game, so if you ever wanted to contribute to the project, I'm sure it'd be more than welcome. Now the options menu. These are the options as of 0.7. The nature of this game is that it is constantly in development, and so these things are due to change a lot, so it's worth paying attention to change logs and such if you're on a newer version. So force capital Y no, or yes no, sorry, in prompts. Now a lot of players like forcing the uppercase Y and N, because it means that you have to press two buttons, shift and Y, shift and N, so that you don't accidentally say yes to something really horrible, which can happen. Celsius, Celsius or Fahrenheit, metric system, pretty self-explanatory. No bright backgrounds is when there's a lot of items on a tile, it will give it a bright background, and in certain other cases as well. Having that turned on so that it doesn't do that might improve performance on some consoles or different hardware. So 24-hour clock, snap to target. So yeah, that snaps the view to the crosshair when you're firing or aiming a weapon or throwing. Safe mode. What safe mode does is it pauses the game when an enemy is spotted. And this setting here means that it's on by default whenever you fire up the game. And yeah, here's the safe mode proximity distance, so you can set that to a very close distance, or you can just set it to 0, which is the default, and that's basically if the character can see something, not necessarily you on screen, but if the character can see something, then it will pause the game and say so safe mode is on. Auto save mode means that after a certain amount of time it will switch safe mode back on even if you've turned it off, and that's how many turns it's going to take there. Now, there is an autosave function in this game, which is odd for a roguelike. You can save the game and quit at any time, and it will also autosave, which does enable you to save scum, which is a contentious point in roguelikes themselves, but as I said, this game is constantly in development. It is alpha, essentially, and there will be times when a bug will just cripple your game. If you're okay with that, go ahead and turn off autosave. But for some players that's unacceptable, and so that option's there. And those are the times, game minutes and real minutes between autosaves. Rain animation, again, that's another performance issue. When it rains, you get little commas dropping all over the screen, so it looks nice. It's a visual cue that lets you know it's raining immediately without having to pay attention to the HUD. And yeah, you've got circular night distances, light distances as well. For disassembling items, this pops up a prompt to ask if you're sure if you want to do it, so you can't just accidentally disassemble something very important. Drop empty containers. Now, containers can be useful for crafting, and this is really a playstyle choice. If you want to be a lightweight character that just goes around scavenging and doesn't have any big crafting projects, then you can turn this on, and they will just, when they finish eating a can of something, they'll just drop the can, and finish drinking a bowl, they'll just drop the bowl, and it stops your inventory getting cluttered up with empty bags and stuff that if you don't want it to. And you can also set it to keep watertight containers, because those are useful for collecting water and gasoline and all sorts of other stuff. It's a hide mouse cursor option, and skill rust. So as the game progresses, your skills will gradually rust. They'll go down if you don't use them. And so that's the 0 setting there. The skills will just gradually decay until they go down to 0. And 1 means that any progress you've made towards the next skill level will be lost over time, but it won't go down a level. And then 2 is none at all. Delete worlds upon player death. So yeah, you could play ultra permadeath by having this on, so that there is no world persistence. Initial points for character creation and maximum trait points. So the way character creation works, I'll show you in more depth in a minute, is by assigning points to things. It's pretty standard RPG stuff. And you can make the game just a little bit easier there. The maximum is 24, and I think, yeah, the minimum is 0. So you could give yourself 0 points to start with, and start with absolutely no skills or whatever. If you, that's not recommended for new players. Initial starting time of the day, that's 8 AM by default. Viewport width and height. This is the resolution of the game. It's not a graphical game. It is tile based. And so you can't set the resolution of the window, you can't resize the window. These are the options which make it bigger. That's 50 tiles by 26 tiles, which is translated to a resolution based on what font size and what font you're using. The move view offset. You can move the view around your character to look around you. The default is 1. You can raise that a lot higher by up to 49, which seems rather excessive. So yeah, that means that you can just sort of snap the view like 10 tiles away from you to get a nice quick look around you. Static spawn. Now static spawn means that zombies are spawned when the map generates, and when they're dead, they're dead. And so if you turn that off, you get a dynamic mode where zombies spawn based on how much noise you're making, I believe, and also the area you're in. So you'll get more in towns and less out in the countryside. But they can just sort of spawn out of nowhere. But with static spawn, it is feasible to go into a town full of zombies, kill all the zombies, and have the town be relatively safe. It does only affect zombies. It doesn't affect wildlife or any of the special enemies in the game. Classic zombies, this option changes the game quite considerably. It disables a lot of buildings. You basically just get normal zombies, zombie children, and zombie dogs as well. But you don't get any of the special zombies with the special abilities. And it disables quite a few buildings. So it makes it quite a bit easier for new players to play with classic zombie mode. Experienced players will be missing out on a lot of content if they have that on, so I think once you've gotten used to the game, how it works and how to survive, you should definitely have that turned off. Zombie revival. Now, zombies do actually come back after you've killed them, unless you destroy their corpse. I'll talk about that in a later video probably. Season length, you can set it to real life season length, so 126 days. By default it is 14, so that's about 2 weeks. If you set that to really long, I mean, surviving in this game is tough, so when the game starts it's spring, and if you give yourself really long seasons, that means you get a really long spring, and the weather is pretty temperate, and you know, there's abundant wildlife and stuff around, so it might make it easier in the short term to give yourself a really long spring, but then it could get tougher later with a really long winter. Static NPCs, these are usually spawned in the evac shelter with you when you start a new character. Random NPCs, I don't recommend having this on. NPCs currently in 0.7 are very buggy. But what this option will do will randomly spawn NPCs around the world, and they will attempt to interact with you. They may be friendly, they may not be. Mutations by radiation, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you encounter radiation, your player will mutate, or not. Save before sleeping, that's pretty self-explanatory. Auto pickup is quite useful. You can set it to pick up whatever you want, I believe, in the in-game help menu. So you can set it to pick up discarded arrows as you're firing a bow, or set it to automatically pick up food when you walk over it, and all sorts of useful things. So yeah, you can set it to automatically pick up things that don't take up any volume or weight, and that's quite a lot of things, usually drugs. Drugs and cigarettes and medications, generally speaking, don't take up any volume or weight. And yeah, auto pickup disabled when safe mode is on, because picking something up takes up turns, and so, you know, if there's enemies nearby, those turns might be extremely valuable in getting away or fighting them, so you can have that turned on. And those are the options currently. So Let's go back, don't save changes because I don't know what I changed. And let's have a look at character creation. Now when you start a new game, you can start a random character, which will just pick traits totally at random, I believe. Preset character, you can save presets. I have a few saved here. So one is a nimble tailor and one is a karate instructor. I'm sure you can guess what kinds of skills they have. And so let's have a look at custom character then. So straight off you see how many points you have at the top there. My settings are currently set to 24 initial points, which is the maximum. And the 4 attributes that your character has here. So strength. Strength affects carry weight and the base HP and also the melee damage. And also it's a sort of constitution stat as well and offers you resistance to diseases and poisons. And it also allows you to smash things, because you can smash just about anything in the game. Furniture and like that, doors, windows. And so the more strength you have, the more effective that's going to be. And not only does it affect the melee damage, but also in the case of some weapons, like cutting weapons, they also affect whether or not your weapon will get stuck in an enemy and be irretrievable. So for a melee character, having high strength is pretty mandatory if you want to survive for any amount of time. Dexterity, we have a melee 2 hit bonus, so this is also important for melee. But at the default 8, that's a +5 bonus, so I mean, you're always going to get a bonus to hit there, even with really low dexterity. But turning it up will obviously make you hit a lot more often. Now, on the default, you actually suffer a ranged penalty. So for ranged weapons, if your dexterity is default, you're already suffering a penalty. So if you plan to use firearms or bows or crossbows, then turning dexterity up is recommended. And you also have a throwing bonus there. I believe it also affects crafting as well. So failure rates on crafting will naturally go down, I think, if you turn the dexterity up. Intelligence affects crafting also, and installing some bionics. Bionics require a lot of different skills and high intelligence without failing. If you plan to make a cyborg character, you probably should have intelligence, because it also affects the read times. There are plenty of skill books in the game, and your speed at reading things goes down considerably as you turn up intelligence. And if you turn it down all the way, the read time goes up. And yeah, if you plan to learn a lot of skills, you will need skill books, particularly if your skill rust settings are such that you're going to be losing skills. Perception. Now, this is important for spotting traps. The traps have a visibility rating that is checked against your perception. And if your perception is too low, you just simply will not see the trap, and you might walk into it. That's the risk you take with having low perception. I believe at 12 you will see pretty much every trap that there is in the game. And again, there's a ranged penalty there, because if you have poor eyesight, your aim might not be very good. Alright, I am using the arrow keys yet again to change these. The controls are written quite clearly on the screen there. So if we move across the traits, here are some really interesting things which affect how the game works. You can buy points with the negative traits on the right and spend points of the positive traits on the left. Yeah, these traits are pretty self-explanatory. There's a good description there for each one. And this is really down to personal preference. There are some things which are just invaluable, like fleet-footed, giving you a speed bonus, and quick, making just everything you do quicker, using less movement points and action points. But really this is just down to your playstyle. Some things are more useful than others. But yeah, this is just the variety and experimentation that's open to you in this game. Right, now professions. I actually have a modified professions file. So some of these, well, most of these are not actually in the vanilla game. Unemployed affects nothing. You have no skills, just the clothes on your back, and they fit well enough, so that's nice. Another vanilla one is lab technician. You have a lab coat and a couple of other sundry items. Wannabe mechanic is another one that you start with. You don't really have any skills, but you do have a wrench and a tool belt and a car magazine, a couple of car magazines which will increase your driving and mechanic skill. So if you plan on playing around with vehicles, then that would be a very useful starting out point. A scoundrel, yeah, you start with a survival and melee skill point. And you have some cargo pants with nice big pockets, so you can pick some stuff up right away. Sundries, spoilers alert, that's some marijuana. And chain smoker, you start with a packet of cigarettes and a nicotine addiction. That's the only one that buys you a point, I think, because addictions are quite difficult to manage. They give you enormous morale penalties when you're craving whatever particular drug you're addicted to. So again, that's a playstyle choice if you want to make it slightly difficult on yourself. It is possible to kick addictions in the game, so there's that. And the rest of these I've just added myself. That's not hard to do. I'll discuss modding in a future video, I think. And skills. I believe that these are not quite as important as the stats that you start off with, because they do increase through use. It is an action-based leveling system. So if you melee a lot of enemies in the game, you will gradually increase your melee skill. But at the start of the game, you can give yourself a head start, and as you turn these up, they use more and more points to prevent you from becoming a super-powered superhero at the start of the game. And yeah, these are all the skills in the game. Dodge, melee, unarmed, bashing, cutting, piercing. Basically all the different weapon types have their own related skill. And some weapons will level 2 skills at once. Like a bow will level archery and firearms. And also a handgun will level handguns and firearms. And melee will be leveled by unarmed and all the melee weapons as well. And they both affect it in slightly different ways. Like the firearm skill is essentially an aiming skill. That you could call it the aiming skill. It's interchangeable, really, which are pretty self-explanatory. Some of them are fairly useless, like barter if you have NPCs turned off. Barter is useless because there's no one to barter with. And swimming is pretty pointless. You don't want to go swimming. There's no need. and some are very useful. If you want to maintain a vehicle, then having a couple of points in mechanics to start off with will allow you to start changing and repairing parts. And again, it just depends on your playstyle. It's all about experimentation with this game. And finally, you pick the name. You can press tab to switch between these things. And it has a random name generator. There are female names. You press the question mark key to generate the names. There's lots of names there. And male names. Or you can just type in a name yourself, like so. And here you see where you save it as a template. You can press the exclamation mark. You can't save it with unused points, apparently. So yeah, if you have a character template that you really like and you want to use it multiple times, then you can save it here. And then when you're ready, you just press the greater than symbol on the keyboard and confirm that you want to proceed, and it will generate your map and put you in the game. And so I'll show the game mechanics in the next video, along with the menus and stuff that you get in game. So thank you for watching this first part. I'll hopefully see you in the next